You are listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank, your partner in possible.
What's up, Chiefs Kingdom? I'm BJ Kissel, CEO and founder of KC Sports Network. That is Matt Miller from ESPN, and this is KCS An Update, our daily Chiefs show and podcast here at KC Sports Network, presented by our friends at DraftKings. Thanks for hanging out, spending part of your day with us today. Please hit that like and subscribe button if you're on YouTube. You can also follow us on your favorite podcast platform by searching KCSN. And we don't just cover the Chiefs, we cover all Kansas City sports and the 3 local colleges. So, Matt, let's get into the headlines right now. Let's just get right into this. I know it's been a couple of days, but it's still kind of weird just in the NFL world with, waiting on hopefully more good news from what we've seen lately on Damar Hamlin, the Bills defensive back that tragically went down and had the cardiac arrest. But I haven't had a chance to talk with you, and everybody's kind of shared their opinions. But as somebody who's covered the game and been so close to it for so long, what was your reaction and just this whole kind of feeling that we all kind of have right now as it relates to talking about the NFL?
Yeah, it's tough. And I feel like everybody kind of took the day off, almost Tuesday to like, hey, let's not talk about football right now. It doesn't really matter. You and I are sitting here Wednesday morning, and it's like, okay, we're kind of getting back into the swing of actually working, and like covering the different ways that we cover football. I mean, it's tragic, it's sad, it's scary. I don't know Damar Hamlin personally, but I obviously evaluated him when he was coming out of Pitt, and he was a really good player who just, unfortunately, he had some injuries in college that made him drop in the draft. Obviously, the Bills got a steal. He's become such a huge part of their secondary, a part of their success. And it's tough because it's like we revert back to talking about the football part of it, and it's like as a human being, like it's terrifying, to have to see a player collapse, and we've seen some head injuries this year that are like, gosh, they make you want to turn the channel and read a book and not watch football for a while. But something like this, it's just it hits so much harder, and not only that, I don't know how it was for you, but like seeing Josh Allen crying and you see the reaction of the players on both sides of the field. I mean, it got me, and I think all of us have experienced in our lives, unfortunately, loss and tragedy, and it reminds you of how fragile life is, and to see it, in an unexpected fashion. I thought Booger McFarland said it so well. It's like, we watch football to be entertained. And when something like this happens, like no one's interested in being entertained anymore. So I'm hoping for the best, obviously. If you're a person that prays, hopefully you're praying for Damar Hamlin. If you're not, hopefully it's, you're sending out all the positive vibes and energy that you can, because it's, the football, as like we've both worked in this industry a long time. It seems like a really big league, but it's actually really small. And that fraternity of players and people who work with teams is incredibly tight knit. And I know it's not just affecting the Bills. It's not just affecting, Pitt Panthers. It's affecting everybody, that plays this game, really.
Yeah, I think, for me, obviously not having any connection to Damar Hamlin, in the latest update on him, just for people listening, is that he is currently sedated on a ventilator. This is from CNN on the report that he said sedated on a ventilator as doctors work toward getting him to breathe on his own. His uncle had told the local media, but that he's trending upwards in a positive way. And I saw some, he's on 50% oxygen as opposed to 100%. So he's making strides going in the right way. There is some concern on his lungs just because he had to be resuscitated 2 different times. But Matt, for me, it was, not having a connection to him, but knowing being around the players and empathizing with, the rest of us kind of start to move on a little bit and just kind of talk about the league and just kind of get that. I don't think that feeling in the back of, our minds, or just kind of like that sunken feeling, is going to completely go away for anyone who covers the league, especially for people who have been around the players and kind of humanize them. I start thinking about all the guys that I've covered or guys that I've been around. Like, holy cow, I can't imagine for the Bills what this is like to go through this. But we did see the other side, and I talked about this with Nate Taylor a little bit yesterday. We were going to talk about a number of different things, and it ended up just being, we talked about Damar Hamlin and just kind of ended. And once we ended the show, we just kind of blankly sat and just kind of stared like, I can't believe, we're seeing the ugly side of football in so many different ways. But in a lot of ways, we also saw the beauty of social media and the way that social media rallied behind Damar Hamlin's foundation for a GoFundMe link that hadn't been activated really in a couple of years, is now over $6.2 million. And I saw that at like 14 grand. I think somebody said they saw it at 8 grand. Now I saw it at 14 grand when I started sharing it, and the whole world was sharing it at the same time. And for that to go to 6.2 million, you get to see the other side of things. But
just imagine when he, is able to come off the sedation, and they, obviously his family's going to be there with them, and they're going to, they're going to have their moment of, hey, you're okay. But they're eventually going to get to tell him, BJ, hey, you remember that toy drive that you started? There's over $6 million in there now. Like, just the, not only the, like jubilation they'll be able to have that he's healthy and he's recovering and he's okay, but to be like, this is how much people love you. I saw someone tweet, like, we often don't get to do that. We talk about people once they're gone, and we don't get the opportunity to express our emotions for them while they're still here. Something we all could probably do a better job of, but for them to be able to have that moment with him of this, this is how much people care about you. And these are the teams and the players and the people who've donated to a cause to show their support for you. I mean, that's, as I have an older brother who has some health issues, and he had to be, sedated, was in a coma for a while. I don't remember exactly how long because you lose track of time, but, I remember when we got the call that, hey, he's awake, you guys can see him. And he wasn't able to speak for a long time after that. But just being able to talk to him and say, hey, here are all the people that have checked on you. Here are the people that have, reached out or come to visit. I know how much that meant to him. I know how much it meant to us. So I'm looking forward to hearing those stories about Damar Hamlin next.
Absolutely. I think the whole world is waiting on that good news, and it's not something you can rush, and you have to let it take its course.
Mm-hmm.
And you talk about the doctors and the athletic trainers and all those people on the sidelines. When you watch an NFL game and you see hundreds of people on the sideline, and you don't necessarily know who they are, you see the people going out there with water bottle. I see it on social media. They're talking about, the water boys and the water girls and all this. Like, those are trained medical professionals that are out there that, the stories and the information that will come out, when we get the good news that he has pulled through all of this, that it's very likely that the experts and the trained medical people saved his life, administering CPR and all of that. And that's those other stories and ways that the NFL gets a lot of grief for a lot of things, and rightfully so, and a lot of ways that they've handled this. But having those professionals down on the field, in the way that they were able to take care of him so quickly, was, I don't want to say a light within a pretty dark place, but when you're trying to look for the positives and things that could have happened and all of that, like, there's so many layers to this. And for the rest of this video and for the rest of this podcast, we're not going to get into the playoff seeding stuff. It's not the time for that, but I do want to talk to you because we generally get your stock up, stock down report. Normally it's on Mondays, but you were stranded in Colorado. I was still down in Dallas with family and friends. And I want to ask a question because it's kind of been thrown around, and I want to spend some time on this. With all of the numbers that we've seen from Patrick Mahomes this season, and obviously the context, and we've talked about it almost every week. Everybody's talked about it every week with Tyreek Hill not being with the Chiefs anymore. Is this the most impressive season of Patrick Mahomes' career, in your opinion?
Man, it's maybe. I do look back to the first year as a starter throwing 50 touchdowns with fewer passes than he's done this year. I think people forget that. He was having 5-6 touchdown games consistently that year, obviously, to get to the 50 touchdown mark. Is why he's going to end up with more yards this year and fewer touchdowns. Some of that is probably the Tyreek factor. That being his first year as a starter, I'll take 2018 as the most impressive year, just because it was like, here's this kid who's like, he was a first round pick and it was unorthodox, and he played that game against the Broncos as a rookie, and you're like, oh, okay, like, there's some flashes here, but like he didn't throw a touchdown that game, right? So I don't think anyone knew. And like, you'll remember, because you were working there at the time, that all the conversation, that training camp, do you remember, was like, he throws so many interceptions in practice, and like he can't get the play call out in the huddle, and now it's like, wait, he won an MVP through 50 touchdowns. They won a Super Bowl. He's pretty good. So I'll take that. I'll take 2018 as the most impressive, but I do think 2022 almost solidifies it, of how great he is, because I do think, there was definitely doubters who would say, oh, well, he has Tyreek. Oh, he has Travis Kelce, and as you know, I grew up a Niners fan, and I still get this shit from people who are like, well, Joe Montana had Jerry Rice. And it's like, okay, well, so did Steve Young, and they all had Bill Walsh. So like, who gets the credit? Maybe it's everybody. So I think for Patrick to have, it's almost like Tom Brady leaving Bill Belichick and winning a Super Bowl. It gives you some credibility, of, hey, I can actually do this on my own. I'm also talented. So I think for Patrick this year, it's a little bit of that, to be like, hey, Tyreek is great. He's a great player, but I can actually do this without him, and we can do this without him. So I do think it takes away any, not that anyone could or should doubt Patrick Mahomes, but if anyone were, like, this is okay. This dude's actually doing it on his own, and he's going to win another MVP, and he's already thrown for 5,000 yards. I mean, I don't want to say he's not going to throw for 10 touchdowns this weekend against the Raiders, but he's probably not going to hit 50 touchdowns again this year. But, he's going to have 40-plus touchdowns to lead the league, and I do think we've seen just the next step in his career.
I talked about this on the 10 Things show, which ends up becoming like 15 things because the superlatives and the records and the paces and all those things are through the roof. And it's actually pretty fun for me to remind myself. And we talk about like not normalizing greatness and understanding what we're watching, and even just like reading through these stats and repeating them a couple of times, not just for effect, but just kind of like let this sink in a little bit. I got some stats here to talk about what Patrick Mahomes has seen this season. I will respectfully push back just a little bit. I think this is his most impressive season. I think you can't remove, everybody's sick and tired of talking about Tyreek not being on this team, but talking about, in my opinion, the most explosive player to ever play the game. He's one of the top 3 receivers in the league.
Yeah.
And that guy, and that's taking nothing away from Juju, these other guys that have come on the team, but every team's going to have some guys.
Yeah.
But you remove Tyreek Hill and his ability to take a quick bubble screen and pick up 15, 20 yards, if not a touchdown, in some very easy ways. There's a lot of yardage that became much more difficult to pick up. Yeah. A lot of those easy yards weren't as easy this year. So when you look at some of these and talking about yardage, on Saturday against the Raiders, Patrick Mahomes needed 186 yards passing plus rushing combined to pass Drew Brees for the most combined passing and rushing yards in a single season in NFL history.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Okay. I didn't know that. That's pretty damn good. Okay.
I got a few more, but
Jesus
it's
Christ.
Like that. You talk about the yardage and it being like, there was no step back. The Chiefs are the leading offense. Like,
will this be his most points,
most yardage?
Then right?
Yeah. Okay. He set the franchise record for touchdowns in a season. He's doing all of it, and teams have scouting reports on him. They know what they can take away. They don't have the ability to pick up as many easy yards as they did because they don't have a freak of nature, alien athletic specimen out on the outside that can take, a quick pass and run it. Not that they still don't include those, not that a lot of his touchdowns aren't to Jerick McKinnon and some other shorter passes, but not going to compare what Tyreek is athletically and his ability to pick up easy yardage to make things easier, not just on Mahomes, but the entire offense. So Patrick Mahomes, 186 yards on Saturday to pass Drew Brees for the most yards by a quarterback in NFL history, combining passing and rushing. And the one that you were mentioning earlier, not normalizing some of this, you're talking about quarterbacks in NFL history that have seasons with at least 5,000 yards passing. Only 3 quarterbacks in NFL history have done it more than once. And it's Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady, who have each done it twice. Patrick Mahomes is 27. Tom Brady is 45.
And Brady's were 10 years apart. I do vividly remember that. They were 10 years apart.
Yes. And then Drew Brees, who did it 5 times, who just racked up yardage left and right.
Yeah.
But when you start talking in context of not just individual great seasons for Mahomes, when you start talking about career numbers for a player that is going to set all kinds of records before he turns 30 years old, and a lot of these 5,000 passing yards, 40 touchdown seasons, you're talking about Patrick Mahomes being tied with Drew Brees as the only 2 quarterbacks in NFL history to do that multiple times.
Pretty good company to be in.
He's 27. Like, by the time he's 30, he's going to have every career record of combined passing.
Is it wild that he's technically not in his prime yet? Isn't that scary? And for quarterbacks, what's prime now? Like beautiful. 30, 32,
yeah.
I mean, I hate you guys, Chiefs fans. It's just like, it's not fair, right? And on top of that, you also have Patrick and I used to give each other hell about this. And I'm going to I hope he watches this because I'm going to finally admit that he's right. You also have the greatest tight end to ever play the position who's having his best year as well. And he's supposed to be slowing down. He's supposed to be old and slowing down, and it's not happening. So it's fantastic. And to your point, if you want to lay out the argument, this is his best year, I think you could even say like guys like Mecole missing an extensive amount of time and the expectations on him. Clyde Edwards-Helaire expected to be, to take some of the pressure off, missed so much time this year.
Yep.
So I do think, my arm could be twisted.
I mean, the offensive line. I mean, that was going to be a strength of this team, and they've been playing much better lately. Talk about Orlando Brown Jr., giving him a lot of flack. He's been playing much better. But you look at those Pro Football Focus numbers between Andrew Wiley and Orlando Brown Jr., those two tackles and combined to give up the most pressures in the league. So it wasn't just Mahomes it was making plays and getting all these yards and putting up these crazy numbers. He was doing it under more pressure than most every other quarterback in the NFL based on, the two tackles on the outside and what they've been doing. So you start adding more and more context. He's the front runner MVP. He's the obvious MVP candidate in my mind. You can make cases and you can say other guys had great seasons, taking nothing away from, the cases for guys like Justin Jefferson. Like I'll listen to that. Like
except for he didn't have that out catch Sunday. So
yeah.
And I know that's not all.
I'm willing to have. I'm not so hardline on this. I'm willing to hear out the conversation.
Yeah. I think the best
again,
if Patrick doesn't win it, it will be because people watched the Eagles with Gardner Minshew and said Jalen Hurts is like a bigger part than maybe they realized. I don't have like a real vote. I mean, we vote at ESPN and they'll put it out there and you'll see my name and Patrick Mahomes. But you're galaxy branding yourself to not vote for him. Like if you don't vote for him, you have a bias. It's basically where we're at.
Even for Chiefs fans, like to look at the last game against the Broncos, be like, man, Mahomes didn't play all that. We said after the game, he's like, he let MVS down, is what he had said, and missed on some throws he should absolutely make. And they made some crazy throws that only a couple quarterbacks in the league could probably make. But he had 328 yards.
Yeah.
How many times has he done this season where you watch other quarterbacks put up 328 yards in a performance like that? And like, man, that's a pretty good game.
I think I said this to you last
force the one in the end zone.
His worst game is a career game for most quarterbacks. Like when we've sat down on Mondays and be like, Patrick was a little off today. Like, that wasn't his best. And then you look at the numbers and you're like, Russell Wilson would, I don't know what he would give up. He would give up his office at Invesco Stadium to have a day like that.
Let us know in the comment section if you think this is the best game of Patrick Mahomes' career. We are going to get Matt Miller's stock up, stock down report right after this. If you've been watching on YouTube, click the link in the corner. It'll take you to the rest of this show in the podcast format, but that's all we've got for YouTube. We appreciate that. We're going to take a quick word from our friends over at DraftKings right now. Appreciate everybody for hanging out. Please hit that like and subscribe button. Here's a quick word from DraftKings. The fan, the tradition, the glory. There's nothing more thrilling than college football, and it all comes down to the national championship game happening on Monday. And my go-to for betting is DraftKings Sportsbook, one of America's top-rated sportsbook apps. TCU and Georgia, that's who's squaring off. It's basically the favorite all season against the underdog that's taken the college football landscape by storm this year. Personally, I've got to stay loyal to the Big 12 and root for TCU. And right now, new customers can bet just $5 on college football and get $200 in free bets instantly, win or lose. Plus, everyone can combine multiple bets for a bigger payout with DraftKings same game parlays. I personally love the app because it's easy to navigate and I can find the plays I'm looking for quick and easy. I love to bet simple on my same game parlays, pick an over under, pick the team that I think is going to cover. And, but I always struggle to take the under, Matt, just because I love action. I love points. I love knowing that there's always a chance that it could happen. I don't want to root against guys making plays, but go download that DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use code KCSN. New customers can bet just $5 on college football and get $200 in free bets instantly. That's code KCSN only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See the show notes for details.